Bienvenue chez London Topless Buses. Le topless est le moyen idéal de visiter sans effort le site touristique de Londres. Je m'appelle Sandy et notre chauffeur est Sid. Sid, are you sure this is the group from Calais? Because they don't seem particularly French to me. The what? Cancelled? Oh, well, thanks for telling me. So, you all speak English, do you?
Yeah.
Well, I won't be needing that then. Hi, everyone, and welcome to London. My name's Sandy, and I'm your tour guide. How are we all today? Everyone okay?
Yeah.
I'm feeling absolutely brilliant today. I am, honest. Now, I know what you're thinking. The wheel's turning, but the hamster's dead. But don't worry, I haven't got going yet. I'm building up to my tour de force, and believe me, it'll be worth waiting for. We're going to have a fabulous tour. Now, because I thought you were going to be foreign, I've brought along a few visual aids to jazz things up a bit. This is Big Ben, which we'll be seeing later. Who wants Big Ben? Oh, lovely. Here's one of the yeoman warders you'll see down the tower. Evening all. Love your helmet, sir. Smashing. Now, what is this one?
Churchill.
It's Winston Churchill, ain't it? Now, you hold that and wave it around when I get to me Churchill bit. Now, what have we got here? Oh, my sandwiches.
I love that.
Only cheese and tomato, I'm afraid. If anyone wants to do a swap later, I'm game. Provided it's not meat, I'm a veggie. Now, that's the basics dealt with. So, off we go. It's not working. Now, our driver is called Sid. He's the best driver in the country, hopeless in the town, but in the country, he's brilliant. See what I mean? Hold on tight. Now, I'm going to take you on a fabulous trip around London. I'm going to show you all the big sights, Trafalgar Square, Big Ben, the London Eye, St Paul's Cathedral, all the way down to the Tower of London. So, sit back and enjoy yourselves. Now, if anyone's got any questions, keep them to yourselves. I'll be too busy talking to answer questions. I'm the original man to mouth me. Now, we're kicking off in Piccadilly Circus. Where are all the elephants? I hear you asking. And the clowns? Where are the clowns? Well, there aren't any. The word circus is a Latin word which means circle or roundabout. Now, behind the electric signs is Soho. Oh yes, see a few of you men smiling at the mere mention of the name. It's a night place, ladies, you know, clubs and stuff. I used to be a stripper once, you know. I did, honest. I'm not ashamed of it. I used to work in this dump called Madam Bridget's Hot Bodies A Go-Go Club. I was a topless table dancer. I was a bit desperate, I'd got to admit. I'd only did it for the money. You know, I'd been on the dole for 12 months, and then I saw this ad in the paper for dancers and went along. How'd you get in though? I used to get giddy standing on the tabletops in my high heels, to say nothing of the sparks I got off the poles. So, I left, and then the next job I got was this. So I'm still topless, but this way, I'm out in the open air. Terrific! Now, over on your right there is the statue Londoners call Eros, the Greek god of love. They say that if you stand underneath it on the stroke of midnight and declare your love to your beloved, that love will last a lifetime. Oh. I'm not sure that's true, because I met my husband, Duncan, under there, and my goodness, have we had our share of problems. Still, you don't want to hear about my troubles with Duncan, do you? Of course you don't. You're all here to see the sights. On the left is Shaftesbury Avenue. That's where all the theatres are. Actually, the first time I met Duncan wasn't under Eros. It was on this bus. Not that he's actually on it, he sort of ran into it on his motorbike, made a big dent in the front. It was over there on the corner of Regent Street when it said. Oh my goodness, what a carry-on that was. Duncan claimed it was Sid's fault, but we won't go into that. Anyway, I got talking to Duncan and I found I really liked him. Oh, he was gorgeous. The spitting image of Mel Gibson. Oh, he had long hair and beautiful green eyes. Oh, and he was all leathered up. I like a man in leather. Of course, it didn't sound like Mel Gibson because he came from Manchester. Spoke like that, you know, like those Oasis boys. And of course, he was half Chinese on his mother's side. So, if you can imagine a leathered up, half Chinese Mel Gibson lookalike who spoke like that, well, that was Duncan. Oh, he was gorgeous. Anyway, straight ahead of you is Leicester Square. That's where all the movie premieres are held. Do you know what Duncan told me he did the first time I met him? He said he worked in films. So I thought, hello, bit of glamour here, know what I mean, girls? Turned out, not to be films, as in movies, as in Hollywood, but films, as in snapshots, as in Cricklewood. He works in one of those places where you drop your holiday pics in, come back an hour later and discover what a crap photographer you are. It's called Well Developed. We're now in the Haymarket. Back in the 17th century, this is where you would have brought your horses and given them hay and stables whenever you came to London. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, Duncan. He asked me out. We tried to blag our way into Stringfellows by telling the bouncer Duncan was Mel Gibson. Didn't work though. Turned out the bouncer hated Mel Gibson. Thought he looked like a girl. Honestly, some people. Now, on your left is Orange Street. This is where the streetwalkers used to ply their trade back in the old days. It was a whore's paradise. They'd do anything for shiny sixpence. Up with the crinoline, down with the knickers. What's your fancy, sir? Oh, that'll cost you an extra shiny sixpence if you want me to do that. It was a huge red light district. Hey, if you want to laugh, look at that road sign. Humps for 100 yards. Now, on the right is the musical The Phantom of the Opera. I haven't actually seen it myself, it's always sold out, but I've heard it's very good. All about this beautiful girl with a great aria who falls in love with some weird-looking musical genius. Andrew Lloyd Webber. He wrote it, didn't he? He writes all the shows. Now, also on the right is a street called Pall Mall, named after King Charles II's balls. He used to get people to whack 'em with mallets. All the knobs would stand in a line and whack away. It was a sort of Italian game, a bit like croquet. Very popular, I believe. Pall Mall was also one of the first streets to be lit with gas lamps. Probably so they could have a few night matches. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I saw Duncan off and on for about 3 weeks. Trouble is, when I was off, he was on. Some slag called Harold. She worked in the Virgin Megastore on Oxford Street and used to give him half-price CDs. I only found out about it by accident. Whenever I'd go around his place, there was CD boxes lying all over the place. I knew he was up to something. For one thing, he didn't have a CD player. And for another, I found a soaker in the bathtub. Bitch. So we had a big row, as you'd imagine, and I stormed out and told him it was over, but he rang me later. He said, would I at least meet him for a drink? So like a fool, I agreed. We arranged to meet under Eros, the Greek god of love, and of course he said he was sorry, and I said I'd forgive him, and we kissed and hugged, and it was all lovey-dovey. Flipping hell, if I'd known then what I know now, I would have pushed him into the bleeding traffic. National Gallery on the left, loads of paintings. We're now in Trafalgar Square, laid out to commemorate the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805. Now, this was a naval battle fought between Britain and the combined forces of France and Spain. Won by us, under that man there, on top of his column, Horatio, Lord Nelson, Admiral of the Fleet. Now, on the other side is the South African High Commission, South Africa House. See the golden springbok leaping out on the corner of the building? Isn't it beautiful? Now, and up there on the balcony was where President Nelson Mandela waved to thousands of people in this square a few years ago. Did you see it on TV? Yeah. I was there. It was brilliant. And on that day, and that day only, we had 2 Nelsons in Trafalgar Square. Not as many pigeons as there used to be. Back in the old days, this was the only place in London where you could feed the birds and have a pigeon sit on your head. And that's it, spelt S-I-T. Oh, quick, look. There's the household cavalry on their way to Horse Guards Parade. Don't they look handsome? The Queen's Lifeguard. They're not supposed to talk to you. In fact, if you ask them a question, you won't get an answer. Some ladies like to tuck their phone numbers into the men's boots, hoping to get a phone call when they're off duty. I did that once, you know. I was about 17, and I wrote something like, "Hi, my name's Sandy and I'd really like to go out with you," followed by my phone number. I didn't hear anything for 5 weeks. Then I got this phone call from this old cobbler who's rehealing the boot. Oh, he was very disappointed, you know. He thought Sandy was one of the horse guards. Can you see those big black gates ahead of you on the right? They guard the most famous address in the country, number 10 Downing Street. That's where the Prime Minister works. I'm not really into politics. It's just a load of men in suits having affairs with their secretaries. Duncan looks good in a suit when he bothers to wear one. You know, if we're going somewhere special, like a wedding. Oh, I love a wedding, don't you? Everyone dressed up with somewhere to go. Actually, it was at a wedding that Duncan proposed to me. To my brother Tim, who was getting hitched. He works in corporate catering, and he fell in love with Nikki, who butters the sandwiches. Nikki spells her name with 2 Ks. By the way, she's very particular. Tends to look down on other Nickies that spell their name with 1 K, or the more traditional CK. Anyway, it was a great day. Duncan was best man, and he had to give a speech, of course. Oh my God, it was so funny. He stood up, and he clinked his fork against his glass to get some quiet, and guess what? The glass smashed. Bits went flying everywhere. Some of it even landed in the bride's grandfather's ice cream sundae. He didn't notice though. He just carried on eating. I think he thought it was bits from the nut brittle topping. Oh, it was only when his tongue started bleeding that we knew something was up. Oh no, we never stopped. You had to be there, really. We're now coming into Parliament Square, the political centre of London. Who's got Big Ben? Hold it up then, wave it around. there's the real thing on your left. Now, Big Ben isn't actually the name of the clock, it's the name of the enormous bell inside the tower. Weighs 13.5 tonnes. Named after Sir Benjamin Hall. Good job, his name wasn't Sir Richard Hall, eh? Right, who's got the Churchill cigar? Come on. The Houses of Parliament is where Winston Churchill had that famous run-in with Bessie Braddock. Has anyone heard that one? No? Well, what happened was, Churchill came back one afternoon slightly, intoxicated. Seems discourteous to say he was pissed, so let's just say he was merry, all right? In fact, he was as merry as a newt. He'd probably had one too many of the old brandies down his club. Anyway, he gets back and he bumps into this Bessie Braddock who can't stand the sight of him. She smells his breath and in a very loud voice so everyone can hear, she says, "Winston Churchill, you are drunk, drunk!" And he turns around, he looks her right in the eye and says, "Mrs. Braddock, you are ugly, ugly, but in the morning I shall be sober." Oh, he was a one with those one-liners, that Churchill. If he'd been around today, he probably wouldn't have gone into politics. More than likely, he'd be writing gags for some TV sitcom. He would. He could knock them out. I'll give you another example of his quick-fire wit. Well, this happened between Churchill and Lady Nancy Astor. She was an American from Virginia and the first female member of Parliament to take her seat in the House. So, one afternoon, all the MPs are in there, debating and what have you, when Lady Astor loses her rag at this remark Churchill's made. So she stands up, shaking her fist, and says, "Mr. Churchill, you're an absolute disgrace. If you're married to me, I poison your coffee." So, Churchill stands up and says, "Lady Astor, if I was your husband, I would drink it." Oh, we have more one-liners than Del Boy. Oh, there's a statue of him on your left, the old bulldog. Anyway, where was I? Speeches, weddings, tongues, blood. Oh yeah, Duncan. We were in this hotel having a slow dance at the reception. I think the DJ was playing Lady in Red by Christopher. Oh, I love that song, don't you? And I was the Lady in Red. I had this satin red dress on and cream shoes from Christian Lacroix. I knew I looked good. In fact, let's not mince words here. I looked stunning. I was the bees of the knee. Anyway, Duncan holds me close and whispers softly in my ear, "Sand, how about you and me doing it?" And I said, "What? Here? In front of all these people?" And he said, "No, tie the knot, get hitched." Oh, it was so romantic. Oh. He was a bit pissed, of course. I mean, he'd had quite a bit to drink to get up the confidence for his best man speech. But I could tell that he meant it. Oh, that he loved me. And I loved him. So I said yes. Oh, it was the happiest day of my life. Oh, I felt brilliant inside. And then the music changed. I think it was Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Two Tribes. And Duncan starts dancing around like men do when they're pissed. And he falls over. Lands on Nicky with 2K's left eye. The one with the blue garter on it. We're now on Westminster Bridge. Now, this is the real reason why London is here. Almost 2,000 years ago, the Romans came to the banks of the River Thames after invading the country in AD 43. They didn't know where the hell they were going. Bit like you lot, really. But where they built the bridge, they called the surrounding city Londinium. and this became London. Londinium isn't a Latin word in itself, so we're not really sure where it came from. Of course, I've got my own little theory about the name. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
I'll go on then. Right. I reckon before the Romans arrived, there were probably already people living in. Peasants, I expect, just sitting about with chickens and sheep and going about doing peasanty things, when the leader of the Romans probably went up to one of them and said, "Here, what's this place called, mate?" And the peasant probably grunted back, "Londinium," which is probably an old British word meaning "sod off, you bastards." Anyway, where was I? Weddings, proposals, Frankie goes to Hollywood. Oh yeah, Duncan. He asked me to marry him. My dad had a fit. My mum was all right. I think she fancied him herself, actually. She's always had a thing about a certain Australian actor. He's very sexy, love. Sounds like a northern Johnny Depp, but looks like Mel Gibson in What Women Want. But my dad, oh, well, he never liked him. The first time I took Duncan home, he hardly said a word to him. He said he didn't like his manner. "I don't like him, Sandra. He sounds like Johnny Vegas, but looks like Mel Gibson in My Bloody Max." Which was a strange reaction, really, considering Mel's brilliant portrayal of William Wallace in Braveheart. But this woman wanted Duncan, so Dad got overruled. So we got married in a registry office in Cricklewood. Oh, it was the happiest day of my life. It's like walking down the aisle with you-know-who. Not that there was actually an aisle, it was more of a corridor. They had the builders in the main room, some kerfuffle with the ceiling. I wanted to get married in a church, you know, the full white wedding. But Duncan insisted on a registry office, claimed he wasn't religious. He was all right though. Apart from his mother. Oh, don't get me started on his mother. Don't talk to me about her silly cow. Face like a raw turnip. We never got on. Oh no. She didn't think I was a good enough match for her precious Duncan. Didn't think I'd make a good wife. "You're no good for him, Sandcastle! Sandy! You're no good for him! He's special boy! You leave him alone? Okay with you?" If I'd known then what I know now. St Thomas's Hospital on the right. A special place for me because it's where I was born. Honest, my mum had come up to town to watch Engelbert Humperdinck at the Royal Albert Hall, and she went into labour in the back row of the stalls. Apparently, her waters broke during the second verse of Please Release Me. The ambulance only got here just in time. There's also a museum here dedicated to our most famous nurse, Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp. As opposed to me mum, it was the lady with the lump. And just beside St Thomas's is Lambeth Palace, the official London home to the Archbishop of Canterbury. And just behind that is St Mary at Lambeth Church, which is where Captain Bligh of Mutiny on the Bounty fame is buried. Oh, I love those Bounty films, don't you? Which one's your favourite? Clark Gable? Marlon Brando? Mine's the one with Mel Gibson in it. Whenever I watch it, I imagine my Duncan strutting about the poop deck, polishing his telescope. "Mr. Christian, this is a mutiny." Now, on the left is the old GLC building. The Greater London Council as was. Now, it's all hotels and luxury apartments. In the bottom is the London Aquarium, which is great if you're into fish. Duncan would often take me there. He is potty about tropical fish, as all sorts. Rare ones too, red firefish, blue spotted longfins, spiny puffers. Oh, I don't know. They're all just floating around in this huge tank behind the telly in our flat. I used to think it was very sophisticated, like something out of Doctor No. But fish are Duncan's biggest love. He gets some from this bloke in Milton Keynes who imports all the rarest species from abroad. We'd often drive down there on his Triumph, and on the way back, I'd sit pillion behind him, clutching these plastic bags of water with fish in them. Once, one of the bags burst, and a Madeira rockfish got stranded in the middle lane of the M25. My God, Duncan went mental. We just stood helpless on the hard shoulder and watched as an IKEA van squashed the bugger flat. Oh, but those fish used to make him happy. And if he was happy, I was happy. So there we all were, him, me, and the fish. Now, do you ever look at that, ladies and gentlemen? The London Eye. The tallest observation wheel in the world, 135 metres high. Impressive, isn't it? You step into one of those glass pods and up you go. Terrific views. Have you heard about the latest craze to get married on it? It's true. Apparently, you have to get married right at the top. Nothing else will do. You only have a few minutes to exchange your vows. And then, like most marriages, it's downhill all the way. Oh, that's better. It's very sticky today, isn't it? Mind you, we had good weather on our honeymoon, Duncan and me. Only rained one day in 2 weeks. We went to the Canaries, Tenerife. Duncan took loads of photos on his camera, which he later developed himself back in the shop. Just as well as some of them were a bit, well, racy. If they'd gone through boots, we'd have probably been arrested. Oh, we had a nice time though, just the three of us. Oh, didn't tell you, did I? His mother came too. Cow. Didn't have any choice really, because she paid for the trip. She got a discount because she worked part-time in the travel agents. I'll get you a nice present in Canary Place, sandbag. Sandy! I'll get you a nice present, but cheaper deal for free than two, so I come too. Okay with you? Oh, there's that actor, what's his name? You know him. The one on the telly off that soap. Oh, thingy, what's his name? He's got a pudding-based haircut and he's always been told about his bad breath. Oh, thingy, what's his name? Kevin! Hello? Oh my God, gave me the finger. Maybe it's not him. Looks like him though, dead ringer. You want to keep your eyes open as you go around London. You never know who you might bump into. I once saw that breakfast television weather girl. Can't remember her name now, but she was the one who stood in front of the mat with her huge boobs. Her left tit always blocked out Cornwall. Anyway, after the honeymoon, we moved into Duncan's little flat in Cricklewood. It's above his shop, actually. He did some sort of deal with the landlord. It's all right though, except for the smell of developer. Oh, I cannot stand that smell. Terrible pong. Gets right up your nose. Anyway, the flat is a bit small, but we liked it. And of course, Duncan didn't have far to go to work, just down the stairs really. So he could have a bit of a lie-in every morning, and more often than not, a bit of the old morning glory. Not getting up just yet, are you, Sand? We're now on Waterloo Bridge, the longest bridge in central London. Now, from this bridge, we can see the two cities that make up London. On the left is the city of Westminster, almost 1,000 years old, and on the right is the city of London, almost 2,000 years old, and originally built by the Romans. It's amazing, isn't it? Sid, slow down so they can take a few photos. Anyway, after the wedding, we moved into the little flat above Well Developed. I'd keep it nice and clean. You'd have never found any dust in there, spotless. Oh, I was really happy. I didn't miss going out to clubs and stuff, you know. After we finished at Madam Bridget's, me and the girls would often go out clubbing, you know, have a bit of a laugh. But what's it all about? You spend your life trying to meet men, don't you? It's again single women looking out for single men and vice versa. Trying to find Mr. Right or Mr. Right now. And then, when you find what you think is the ideal bloke, you fall in love and marry him, if you're lucky. And then you settle down, which is what we did in Cricklewood, above Well Developed. Now, on your right is Somerset House, better known as the former offices of the General Register of Births, Marriages and Deaths. The Hatcham, Matcham and Dispatcham place. Anyway, we were really happy in our little flat. Apart from one thing, it was around this time that we discovered we couldn't have kids. You can imagine the pressure from his mother. Why not kids some paper? My boy, my good father, you get on with it. Okay with you? No, it's not okay with me or him. Mind your own business, turnip face. We're now approaching Covent Garden. There used to be a fruit, veg and flower market here back in the day. Has everyone seen My Fair Lady? This is where Professor Henry Higgins first met Eliza Doolittle. Oh, I used to love that film when I was small. I used to pretend I was Audrey Hepburn and my little brother Timmy would be Rex Harrison. Do you know what? I nearly choked once because Timmy kept trying to make me talk proper by filling my mouth with gobstoppers. Silly really, because Timmy looked nothing like Rex Harrison. He used to stand there in his short trousers and make me say, "The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain," again and again. Oh, but I used to love Rex Harrison. He was one of my first crushes. Him and the odd-looking bloke out of Boney M. Yeah, it's no wonder I turned out like I did. The thing is, Duncan and I really wanted kids. We really did. So, we went at it hammer and tongs, so to speak, but nothing happened. I said we should go and have tests and see what could be done, but Duncan didn't want to do that. I think he thought it was unmanly, you know, going into a cubicle with a copy of Razzle and a jam jar. So, I secretly went and had my own tests and eventually discovered it was me who couldn't. God, that came as a shock, I can tell you. Some blockage somewhere. I never told Duncan, just kept it to myself. Wish I had done now. Still did a bit of this, you know, the tour garden in the summer anyway. Looking back, it was probably the worst decision I made. You see, in the summer, people take loads more photos, so Duncan was working 12, 14 hours a day, developing and printing. It was all getting a bit much, so he decided to do something. One day he said to me, "I'm taking on an assistant, son." And that's when she came into our life. On the left is the London School of Economics, which is where Mick Jagger went as a student. But he left early because he couldn't get no satisfaction. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, Sonia Gray. She wasn't even very pretty. She had long black hair and pinched features. I called her the Hawk. She had that kind of look as if she was about to swoop down from a height and claw a sheep. Aside from that, she seemed okay. Anyway, she'd come in at 9:30 in the morning and stand behind the counter all day, taking in people's rolls of films and working the till. Apparently, she'd done something similar in Wednesbury. "If you want an extra set of prints, we've got a special 2-for-1 offer on. Quite a saving, I think you'll find." Duncan was out the back in the dark room doing the real work. At least that's what I thought. But there's other things that you can get up to in the dark of a dark room. Things started developing, if you see what I mean, between Duncan and the Hawk. And I'm not talking Kodak paper here. I came back from work early one afternoon and I could hear him and her in there. You know, heavy breathing and stuff. But you know, it's very difficult when two people are at it in a dark room. You know they're in there, but they have the perfect excuse for not unlocking the door. Just a minute, love. Be out in a moment. There's a film developing. It is hopeless. By the time you get in there, it's all a red glow and everyone's peering at strips of negatives. The Hawk tended to avoid the dark room after that, but I knew something was going on. I mean, you just know, don't you? Now, here's a lovely little church. St Clement Danes, the central church of the Royal Air Force. The bells ring out the tune to the nursery rhyme, Oranges and Lemons. Does everyone know that one? I do. My nan used to sing it to me when I was small. It's like a conversation between all the bells of all the London churches. Do you want to hear it? All right then, I'll see if I can remember it. Oranges and lemons, said the bells at St Clement's. Pancakes and fritters, said the bells at St Peter's. 2 sticks and an apple, said the bells at Whitechapel. You owe me 5 farthings, said the bells at St Martin's. When will you pay me, said the bells at Old Bailey. When I grow rich, said the bells at Shoreditch. Pray when will that be, said the bells at Stepney. I'm sure I don't know, said the great bell at Bow. Here comes a candle to light you to bed. Here comes a chopper to chop off your head. Royal Courts of Justice on the left. Civil litigation only. Suing someone or getting a divorce. So what was I to do? I was convinced Duncan was having an affair with the Hawk, so I decided to turn detective. I reckon he got wind of the fact that I suspected something, because the Hawk tended to avoid the dark room. She didn't go in there so much anymore. So, where were they liaising? Because liaising they were. I was convinced of that. He was meeting her somewhere. Most nights, he was out till quite late, saying he was meeting business acquaintances. But I knew he was seeing her. I mean, there's only so many well-developed franchise holders around. He said I could always get hold of him in an emergency by texting him. Frustrating things, aren't they, texts? Occasionally I send a message like, where are you and what are you doing? Talk about being naive. As if he was going to text me back, shagging, nearly finished, be home soon, Duncan. But I knew where he was, really. I mean, you didn't have to be Inspector Morse to work that one out. There's only one place he could be, round hers. That's Monument to Temple Bar, and it's very significant. As soon as we pass under it, we enter the City of London. Not very big, the city, about 1 square mile big. So, I decided to stake out the Hawk's place in Kilburn. Wasn't very grand. She lived in this grotty 1-bedroom ground floor flat. She did have a little garden out back though, all overgrown, of course. But about halfway down, there was a tree. Perfect cover. So I climbed over the wall, set myself up in position, and on the first night, I saw them. Oh, hold the front page. We're going down Fleet Street. For over 300 years, this is where we published our newspapers. Not many papers here today, though, they've all moved out. But some great writers started along this street. Charles Dickens, Arthur Conan Doyle, Jackie Collins. They all wrote for newspapers and magazines. But there is one legacy left over from the journalistic days. The pubs. Fleet Street is a great place for a pub crawl. There's more pubs along this street than almost anywhere else in London. Now there's a sobering thought. Anyway, where was I? Stakeout, got your flat in Kilburn. Oh yeah, Duncan. I was watching them both through her kitchen window. She was trying to get the cork out of a bottle of wine, but she just couldn't do it. So she passed it to Duncan, and he was pulling and pulling with the bottle between his legs, and his face was getting redder and redder. And then it happened. His back went. He's always had a bad back. The slightest thing sets it off. You should see him doubled up like a Himalayan Sherpa. Well, there was a real drama then. She was running around trying to help him, and he kept saying, "Don't touch me, don't touch me." "What's the matter, donkey?" "Me back's gone." "Lie on the bed, I'll rub it." "No." Well, there was a right fandango then. I thought, there's no point me staying here, so I went home and necked half a bottle of vodka. Tried to imagine what I'd say to Duncan when he came in. Shouldn't have bothered, really. By the time he got in, all doubled up from the hawk, I passed out on the sofa. Oh, I woke up in the morning with this cracking headache, and there he was, lying on the floor beside me, fixing his back. He has to remain rigid on the parquet for a minimum of 3 hours. I didn't say anything to him that morning, you know, about him and the hawk. I mean, I hadn't actually seen anything, you know, not really. No. I had to get hard evidence. Well, it didn't take long. About 2 weeks later, I was busy doing my ironing, and Duncan comes up from the shop and says, "Can he have a word with me?" "Something important," he says. "Could I have a word, son?" "Of course, Dunk." Well, he only came straight out with it and said he'd been having an affair with the hawk. No hesitancy, no nothing. "I think you should know that I've been seeing Sonia. Been having a relationship." "Oh." Well, that really knocked me sideways. I mean, I know I already knew and all that, but for him to just come and tell me matter-of-factly like that, well, cut through me like a knife. Really hurt inside. But nothing, he said, could prepare me for what was coming up next. He then said that she was pregnant and expecting his baby. Oh, by this point, I did not know where to look. I was looking in every direction but his. It was the bombshell from hell. I was speechless. Well, speechless as you can be when you're throwing an iron at someone. Mind you, I didn't hit him. Don't know if it was my eyes not looking or what, but the bloody iron ended up in the flaming aquarium. The top was off because earlier I'd been feeding him. Well, there was this huge flash and all the fish got electrocuted. They all just floating on top of the surface. Oh my God. Duncan went berserk. Never mind about him and the hawk. He just went into one saying I deliberately murdered his precious blue-spotted frigging long-fin whatsits. "You bloody woman! I'll never build a collection like that again!" Oh, he went mental. Well, by this point I'd turned on the waterworks and I was bawling and all that, and he seemed to have calmed down a bit. So we sat down and had a frank discussion about him and the hawk. Didn't resolve anything. He said she was 3 months gone, claimed he was in love with her, and that night he moved out. Simple as that. He just packed his suitcase and walked out. Felt so alone that night. Just me in that bloody flat. Me in a tank full of fish just floating on the surface, staring at me with dead eyes. St Paul's Cathedral, Wren's masterpiece. Be up there in a moment, tell you more then. Anyway, it always amazes me how quickly one can recover if you've got a goal. and I had a goal all right. I wanted Duncan back whether the hawk was pregnant or not. I've been done too many times to realise if you don't get in there straight away, you lose ground. Strike while the iron's hot. And I had my opportunity, because Duncan was still opening up the shop every day, even though he was actually living with her. She wasn't working with him by that point, of course. I'd have throttled her if she'd taken one step over the threshold, and she knew it. So, I made it my business to go down and see Duncan. Take him a cup of tea occasionally and that sort of thing. I think it threw him, to be honest with you. You know, hell, F, no fury and all that, and there I was, popping down to see him every 10 minutes like Mary Flippin' Poppins. The Old Bailey's on the left, our Central Criminal Court. See the Statue of Justice on top of the dome? Wonder what it's like to stand in the dock in there. At least they don't hang people anymore. Ruth Ellis was the last woman to be hanged in this country, 13th of July, 1955. She murdered someone for love. It's not as uncommon as you might think. So, there I was, declaring my undying loyalty to the rat, and to be honest, I did still love him. Even after all he'd done, I was still in love with him, and then one day, something extraordinary happened. St Paul's Cathedral took Christopher Wren 35 years to build and was opened in 1710 in the reign of Queen Anne. Of course, we all know St Paul's from 1981, don't we? This is where Prince Charles married Diana. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, it was a Wednesday. And I popped down to see Duncan, took him a cup of tea. He was busy in the dark room, but he said he wouldn't mind if I joined him. It was weird being in there with him, you know, just the red glow. It's kind of romantic in a funny sort of way. So, as he developed pictures of people's holidays, we got talking about this and that. And to be honest, we were getting along better than we had in months. He didn't even mention the hawk. I don't know if it was deliberate or not, but I actually had to bring her into the conversation. Said something subtle like, "So how are you getting on with what's her name?" Well, to my astonishment, he said they'd been having filthy great rows. She banned him from the bedroom and he was having to sleep on the sofa in her front room. "She got me kipping on the sofa sand with my back." Well, you could have knocked me down with a throwaway camera. I said to him what was the problem, and he said that he reckoned she'd faked the pregnancy. Because now she said she'd miscarried it, and he didn't believe her. Oh, it sounded too good to be true, if you know what I mean. Him and the hawk not talking, and her not expecting anymore. Talk about a turnaround. Well, you can guess what happened, can't you? That's right. Oh. It just felt right, you know, him and me thrashing about on the floor underneath the enlarger and fixing tanks. Oh, it was fantastic. Till afterwards, he got a text from her. Don't ask me what it said, but it must have been something lovey-dovey, because the next thing you know, he's pulling on his jeans and getting ready to go. I said to him, "Where do you think you're going then?" And he said, "Back to hers." And I said, "But I thought you were having terrible rows and having to kip on the sofa with your bad back and all that." And he said, "I can't help myself. I love her and I want to be with her." And then he left. Just like that. Bastard. I felt used, cheated, crippled inside, and it was then, it's at that precise moment that I knew I was going to have to cause him some serious grief. My head was just exploding with it all. "Bring out your dead! Bring out your dead!" That is what they were shouting in these very streets in the long, hot summer of 1665, the year of the Great Plague, the bubonic plague. The flea, living on the rat, spread it. Men walked up and down these streets shouting, "Bring out your dead," so they could cart the corpses off to the plague pits. There was a terrible stench of rotting flesh because they couldn't get them out fast enough. Mothers used to teach their children a little rhyme as they played on the streets in the hope that it would ward off the fever. Some of you probably know it. Ring a roses, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down. Do you all know that one? Mm-hmm. Let me tell you what it meant. Ring a roses, well, that was when you knew you'd caught the plague. You had a thumping hot temperature and a rash of rosy red rings all over your body. A pocket full of posies, well, that was the herbs and spices you'd have about your person to ward off the fever. Remember, there was no medicine in those days, no antibiotics, nothing. A tissue, well, that was when you started sneezing. Continuous sneezing was the final symptom. Once you started sneezing, you knew you were going to die. And we all fall down? Well, that was when you snuffed it. A terrible way to go. Now, on the left is St Mary Le Bow Church, famous for its bow bells. They say that if you're born within the sound of bow bells, you can call yourself a London Cockney. Anyway, what was our diseases, plagues, rats? Oh yeah, Duncan. How was I going to get my own back? Punishing, because that's what I had to do, and let me tell you, it is not that straightforward. Oh no. My first idea was to kill him. I know, you probably think I'm completely mad, Alfreda Hitchcock. And I probably was. I was just so wound up inside, I didn't even think of any consequences. Duncan had hurt me beyond repair, so the obvious solution was to get rid of him permanently so he could never ever do it again. So except that was my state of mind. Not normal, I know, but I'm sure all of you at some point have harboured similar thoughts. Anyway, it's a pointless exercise. Even if you do want to kill your old man, where do you find someone to do it? I mean, it's not like you flick through the yellow pages looking under contract killers, do you? Hello? Is that contract killers are us? That's right. Want someone taken out? Well, I don't know, how do you actually do it? You leave that with us, little lady. We're the experts. Oh, how much does it cost? 25 grand. Oh. Do you take Visa? We're now on London Bridge. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. This is where they used to stick the heads of the executed prisoners. They used to stick the heads at the end of a park staff and put them at the entrance to the bridge as a sort of warning to others. Hang on, I've got one of me visualised somewhere. The first ever head put up was William Wallace, the famous Scottish patriot. Remember the movie Braveheart? Oh, he looks a bit angry, doesn't he? Reminds me of someone. Anyway, I couldn't get someone to kill Duncan, but I had to get him somehow. Oh, and about. Just down here, beside London Bridge, is where the famous Nancy steps were. As in Charles Dickens' novel, Oliver Twist. This is where Nancy betrayed Bill Sarks and he murdered her. Do you remember that? I do. It was over the next few weeks that things started becoming clearer in my mind. I thought I'd try a different angle. Don't do anything at all. Lay off Duncan, give him a bit of space. I figured it wouldn't take too long for him to get bored with the hawk and then he'd come back to me. And I'd forgive him and we'd start again and we'd put all this dreadful business behind us. Might even adopt a baby. I liked that idea. I did, you know, that we could be a little family and all that. In fact, gave me a certain peace of mind. Kept me going through that dark period when everything was topsy-turvy. The doctor put me on trance, which helped, of course. To some extent, anyway. Although, now I'm not so sure that those pills didn't affect my mental judgment a bit. So, there I was, sort of floating around in limbo land, waiting for Duncan to get bored with the hawk, when one day, something awful happened. Have you ever had one of those days? You know, when you think things can't get any worse, and then it does. Well, that is what happened to me. I remembered it so well. I'd gone down to Tesco's, I stumbled back my groceries, and then I saw this letter on the hall floor. It's from some solicitors informing me that Duncan was seeking a divorce. Some grounds or other. Oh, I just couldn't take it in, to be honest with you. It's that much shaking with anger. I immediately went downstairs to the shop to have it out with him. What's the meaning of this? I'm sorry if I've hurt you, son, but the fact is I'm in love with Sonia and I want to marry her. That's all there is to it. Well, I lost it, I'm afraid. I went mental. I swore at him and called him every name under the sun. I was appalling. Everything came out. Dark rooms, fish tanks, Chinese mothers, you name it. Anyway, there was no change in his mind. He wanted me out of the flat and out of his life ASAP. I just couldn't accept it. Didn't know what to do next. I knew I had to do something, but what? Now I really did feel like killing him. But that would have been too easy. Now, I wanted revenge. I wanted to make him suffer for all the hell he put me through. But killing him wasn't the answer. Now, if I wanted to cause him some serious grief, I had to hurt him in the strongest way possible. You know, make him really suffer. And in order to do that, I'd have to kill her. The hawk. And if I could do that, well, it just seemed the right thing to do. And although I know I would never have been capable of killing Duncan, however much I now hated him, I was confident that I was capable of killing that cow. I think it was a Thursday afternoon when I realised that the perfect time to kill the hawk would be the following Saturday. Why? Because that particular Saturday was Duncan's birthday. What better day to kill her than on his birthday? That way, he'd be reminded of her every single year. Now all they had to do was come up with a foolproof method of murdering her. I spent the next few weeks deep in research. I read anything that would provide me with a method of killing. I went to the library. I took out Agatha Christie's, Ruth Rendell's, even old Sherlock Holmes stories. I did. But nothing was as inspirational as this place. The London Dungeon. London's Horror Museum shows you all the horrible things that have happened to London over the centuries. The plague, the rats, the torture, the blood, the gore, the fear, the terror, the horror is all in there. It's like Madame Tussauds Chamber of Horrors times 10. It was mind-provoking. Especially the Jack the Ripper stuff. You see, like him, I was after the perfect murder. One that could be suitably carried out without the slightest lead coming back to me. I became an authority on murder. I learned how to poison. I learned how to cause accidental death. I learned how to kill in every manner possible and not get caught. It's amazing, you know. If you want to learn how to kill someone, there's more books to show you how to do it than if you wanted to save life and train as a doctor. I became an authority on death. But funnily enough, it was none of the methods that I read about that became our final choice. Although, I'm not saying that they didn't spark me off. No. My choice, the way I was going to kill the hawk, was all mine. It was totally my invention. And it was foolproof. It had to be the perfect murder. One that even Columbo wouldn't be able to solve. Oh dear. Rain's on the way, what a shame. Anyway, this was my plan, right? I'd get up as normal on the day, do a bit of cleaning, the usual stuff, and then I'd pop downstairs to the shop to say hello to Duncan. Hi, Duncan. Oh, hi. He'd be too busy to talk, which would be fine by me. I'd probably wish him happy birthday, though. I'd then ask him if I could borrow his little van to do some shopping. He'd be bound to say yes, you know, just to get me out of there. I'd then drive over to the Hawk's place, slip on a wig, sunglasses and a bit of a lippy. I'd go up to her front door and press the buzzer. She'd be surprised to see me, of course, you know, we weren't spoken in months. And chances are she wouldn't recognise me straight away, so I'd explain that the wig was a new look I was trying out. She'd be bound to make a few derogatory remarks. Not being funny, but that colour doesn't really suit you. As if she'd know anything about style. Then, before she could ask me why I was there, I'd explain that I'd come to terms with Duncan leaving me in setting up with her, and now I needed to just clear the air with her. She wouldn't want me in there, that's for sure, but I'd push past her anyway and head straight into her lounge. Now, I knew this next bit would upset me. You know, I'd have to steel myself. Many of Duncan's things will be in that room. I've envisaged it so many times in my mind. You know, his books, a framed photo of him and her on the mantelpiece perhaps, his jacket slung over the back of the chair the way he always used to. It'd all be so bloody cosy. And of course, running alongside the wall would be his beloved aquarium. That bloody fish tank meant everything to Duncan. The day he came back for it and took it out of our flat was the day that I knew he wasn't coming back. Ever. But little did anyone know, that glass receptacle would provide me with my method of killing the hawk. To give the hawk her due, she'd probably accommodate my visit. She'd probably offer me a drink. Fancy a cuppa? And I'd say yes, even though I knew I wouldn't actually be drinking it. I wouldn't even touch the cup. Oh no. I didn't want anything to incriminate me. Nothing to show I was ever in the flat. So, while she'd be dithering about in the kitchen, I'd slip out a pair of marigolds that I'd have in my bag. I'd nip over to the aquarium and take off the top. I can imagine all the little fish immediately coming up to the surface with the little mouths opening and closing. Chances are she'd have forgotten to feed them. I'm always forgetting to feed his fish. I'd then take a plastic bag out and rip it open. A torrent of water would flood into the tank. There'd be a vibrant flash of colour. Velvety orange, brown and blue stripes would slip under the surface. I'd then look around for the nearest heavy object to put in there. Could be anything. An ornament from the mantelpiece perhaps, a paperweight, flower pot. It doesn't matter as long as it's sunk to the bottom of the tank. I'll then put the lid back on, take off my gloves and sit back down. The hawk could come in with her tray of tea things and join me. She'd probably start making small talk. Something that in her pea-sized brain was important. Did you watch EastEnders last night? And then I'd suddenly look over to the aquarium with an innocent, puzzled look and ask why the object was in there under the water. Her face would be a picture. What's that doing in there? That shouldn't be in there. She wouldn't be able to understand it at all. There'd be total bewilderment. Her one brain cell would be on time and a half. She'd go over to the aquarium, I'd follow her, and she'd take off the top and plunge her hand into the water to get the object out, and then it'd happen. she'd scream with the pain. The tail fins of the Indian Ocean clown surgeonfish exude a horrible poison. Just like I read about in one of Duncan's books that he accidentally left behind in the flat. Really painful. So, while she'd be running around in agony, I'd look around for the nearest heavy object, maybe the teapot, and I'd bring it down on the back of her head. Clunk! She'd be out cold. Simple as that. She'd be lying there on the rug. But I wouldn't blow. Oh no. Too much to do. I'd wrap her in some bin liners, drag her outside, and put her into the back of the van. Oh, hang about. Here comes the Tower of London. I'll tell you the rest in a minute. Better put your brollies up as we cross Tower Bridge, though. Here it comes. Ever since William the Conqueror built the original tower with his brother in 1078, this castle has been associated with torture, imprisonment and execution. 7 people have had their heads cut off here, including Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, 2 of Henry VIII's 6 wives. They were led onto the executioner's block and off came their heads. In one cut of the axe if they were lucky. They were led onto the executioner's block and decapitated, beheaded, topped, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, I bungled the hawk into the back of the van. Nobody sees me do it. I'd then drive to this isolated part of the Thames that I know, remove her clothes and dump her in the water. Be as easy as that. Really would. She'd go off with the current and that'd be the end of it. Until later, of course. The police would be bound to find the body at some stage and fish it out. Duncan would have reported her missing, so presumably he'd be asked to go and identify her. But you see, the thing is, he wouldn't be able to. Because just before I put her in the river, I'll cut her head off. Oh, this isn't her. This is Anne Boleyn. One of me Michelin's. Ugly old cow, isn't she? I'll tell you what, I'll put back in my bag. A brilliant plan. Wouldn't you agree, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to find out whether it would have worked or not. When I went over to the Hawk's place, all dolled up in my wig and what have you, she was coming out with a load of suitcases and piling them into the back of a taxi. Despite my careful disguise, she recognised me immediately. Oh, hello. What are you doing here? She then told me that Duncan had been having an affair with some trollop called Tina. He's shagging the cow. She works for the Dolly Silk franchise for Well Developed. Well, would you believe it? Apparently, the hawk had had enough and was off to live with her sister in Sutton Coldfield. She'd known about the affair for a few weeks, but decided to move out today because it was Duncan's birthday. I thought, great minds think alike. She said that the landlord wanted their flat vacant ASAP so he could move some Russian students in. She said, would I mind asking Duncan to come and collect his fish tank? Would I mind? I said I'd be delighted. Trouble is, Duncan's disappeared. No one's seen or heard of him for weeks. He's completely vanished. God knows where he is. If you see him, tell him to get in touch. Can't miss him. He's a spitting image of Mel Gibson. Anyway, that's the end of my tour, folks. Welcome to London.